Excuse me. I have a little bit like a trivia question for you all. What was the first hymn written in the United States that became the most popular hymn in the mid-19th century, 1850s, 1860s? That's a good guess, O Little Town of Bethlehem. I'll give you a hint. We sang it. We sang it today. Yeah. We Three Kings. We Three Kings. It was actually written by an Episcopalian who went on to become a priest, although at the time he was a choir and music director, and he wrote We Three Kings for a Christmas pageant, so his nieces and nephews could dress up like Luca, John, Michael, and Riley did this morning and process in as kings, each singing a verse like Phil and Martin and Karen did this morning. So it was the first like Christmas carol written here that became really, really popular. And another little bit of trivia for those who know our former rector, Father John Sorensen. Before he was here, he was in Plattsburgh, New York, at Trinity Church, and one of the previous rectors there was the guy who wrote We Three Kings. Yeah, just like one of those like 6 degrees of separation kind of thing, right? Anyway, that hymn, We Three Kings, gives us a lot of our like mythology or our imagery around how we envision the visitors that come to Jesus bearing gifts. We think of them as kings, and so we put crowns on them, and our little figurines up here at our creche also, they've got crowns. But if you look back at Matthew's gospel, he does not describe them as kings. Instead, he uses the word magi, from which we get magician, right? And since we don't want to sing about 3 magicians showing up at Jesus's manger, John Henry Hopkins, who wrote that hymn, sort of changes it to kings. We call them wise men, magi. So we don't even know how many there were. Matthew doesn't say, and 3 travelers. He just describes them as magi, but there are 3 gifts, so we imagine that each one only brought one gift each, and showed up there. So, like I said, that hymn kind of gives us some of the imagery that we associate with that. But there's a lot more going on in this story than 3 people who've traveled really, really far to see a baby and show up at the first baby shower ever. Matthew was doing a lot with this story. And in fact, in Matthew's whole gospel, we can almost see it as he's writing, offering us 2 ways, 2 kings that we can choose to follow. And one of those is Jesus and the kingdom of God. And the other is the kingdom of this world. Herod, Herod the Great, who is the king in this story, and then one of his sons, Herod Antipas, is the one who's there when Jesus gets crucified. So Matthew is kind of setting this up throughout, almost as a conflict, throughout his gospel. There are two kingdoms that we can choose to follow. The kingdoms of this world or God's kingdom. King Herod or King Jesus. Herod's actions in this story when the Magi come, and the Magi, they're following this star, right? They see a star. They're wise people, astrologers, people who study nature and science and the heavens, trying to interpret what God's will for them might be by looking at that. And they see this star, and they, in what is their west, and they're from the east, and they travel westward to where this star is. And as they're traveling westward, and they must be getting into Israel, Palestine, and decide this is where the king is, the star that's heralding the birth. And since they're in Israel, they're going to go to Israel's capital to see the new king, right? So they wind up in Jerusalem. I think if they had kept following the star, they would have got their GPS location right and gone to Bethlehem. But as humans often do, when we think we know where we're going and we, turn off Google Maps, they wind up in Jerusalem, the city of power, where the king is. They wind up where the might of the Roman Empire is in that area. And so they go to Jerusalem. Last week, if you were here for Margie's sermon, she did a really good job describing the kind of person that Herod the Great was. He was, in fact, not that great of a human being. He might have been a great ruler to inspire terror and fear in people, but he did that through violence. And so these magi, maybe they had heard of Herod, maybe not, but when they ask him where is the new king, they've given Herod information that he decides to react with violence. Herod has already killed several babies, his own children, who as adults he was afraid he was gonna get deposed by them. He's already killed his wife, also afraid of her power and what she might do to his power. And so when these magi show up, we're given these two ways of acting in the world. Is Herod going to choose to act as God would? Or is he going to act as he's been acting? And he chooses this other way. And on hearing this news, Herod does four actions. First, he calls together some advisors to hear what they have to say. Where is this new king supposed to have been born? Right? He gets that information. And then together, they devise an action plan. Next, he sends out some spies. Really, it's the wise ones. He says, go, pay homage to the child, then come back. Give me that information so that I can pay him homage. Do you think he's going to kneel down at the creche, at the manger with Jesus? No. So Herod lies. Right? So he gathers his information from his allies. He wants spies. He lies. And then finally, his fourth action is to respond with violence. When Herod learns that the Magi have defied him, have refused him, have chosen a different action than what he wanted, he responds by killing all the children in Bethlehem and the surrounding area who were 2 years old or younger. So afraid of the birth of a child that he goes and kills dozens of children. For his one life to remain as it is, he will sacrifice all of the lives. The Magi's, too, they have a choice to make. They've followed that star for a while, westward. to Jerusalem. They're told to go on to Bethlehem. And as they do, they realize there's the star again, right? There's God's guiding light for them again. And they go until where they come upon the Holy Family, the child Jesus, not really a baby anymore by the time they get there. He's grown a little bit. And they show up. And now they could have taken that information, seen the baby, hightailed it back to Jerusalem to let Herod know the location of the child. But instead, they respond with overwhelming joy, Matthew says. Okay? And they take out and they respond by opening themselves up, by giving gifts. Okay? 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, myrrh. Like I said, that's how we get 3 people. And usually these 3 gifts are understood sort of traditionally as being gifts given to Jesus that highlight who he is and what will happen to him. So he's given gold because he's a king. He's given frankincense because of his divinity. Frankincense, incense, is what you light in the temple when you're praying. Prayers ascend up to God with the incense. And myrrh, because it was one of the spices used on a dead body. Part of the preserving, part of the, help with the smell, right? To show that this child will die, but through his death will have life, right? Gold, frankincense, myrrh. And that's true. I mean, those could be good reasons, but I think the Magi, when they open themselves up, when they respond to God's gift of light with love, when they're sharing what they have, they're sharing out of a place of joy and abundance and life. And the 3 things that they give will give healing and life to the Holy Family. They give gold to the child who is king. You normally would pay gold to a king so that they don't kill you. Right? That a king who has overtaken a land, who has conquered a place, and now is in charge of that land's resources, the people, as a tribute, give those resources to their conqueror so that they don't die. Instead, the Magi are sharing their resources with the Holy Family, which will give them life. Because the next thing that they do, Joseph takes Mary and the child and flees to Egypt, something I think he could only do with the gold that's been given to them. That gold becomes a vehicle for life for Jesus and Mary. Frankincense is burned because it smells beautifully, but one of the properties of it that was often used millennia ago was to alleviate anxiety and depression because it smells so lovely. Just as we kind of do with our essential oil diffusers now, right? It was burned as a healing scent. Also, if there's been illness or death in a home, that you would light that, again, to sort of help heal the air there. And myrrh is used as a burial spice at the end of life. But for millennia, it was used at the beginning of life for postpartum wound care. Yeah, it's a gift for Mary, who's given birth, to help her heal from that. Gold, frankincense, myrrh, gifts of life and healing given by these Magi. And I think having spent time with God's gift of love and light, having spent time with the child, baby, toddler, Jesus, they know they've got a choice to make. Do they take the road back to Herod? Do they go on the paths that they've already walked? Or do they choose a different path? Do they choose to orient themselves differently, away from violence and power and oppression and military might, to life and love and light? And so the first, one of the first acts of Christmas is the Magi resisting what Herod wants and Herod's choice, and choosing a new path for themselves. I've been, like many people, wrestling with the events of the last week or two in our country. And what I hear a lot is fear and anxiety and nervousness. I hear a lot of pain, and mostly just fear for ourselves, for our family, for our loved ones, for our country, for our community, for other people we don't even know yet. And I think this Epiphany season, we get to choose what kind of path we want to walk, what kind of people we want to be. If we want to be people of the light, or people of the empire. Do we want to belong to the kingdom of God or the kingdom of this world? It's the choice the Magi had to wrestle with and make. And it's still a choice we need to make each day. Do we side with modern day Herods who want to wage war and military power and oppression over? Or do we side with Jesus, who always chose the side of the vulnerable, the sick, the hungry, the wounded, those who need community and love and presence? The Episcopal Bishop of Minnesota put out a statement earlier this week. And in it, he calls us Christians as people of the Epiphany. Bishop Barbara Harris, who is the first woman Episcopal bishop in our church, bishop in Massachusetts, where I grew up, she always called us Easter people, right? That we're Easter people, people of hope and life and resurrection, people who have been through darkness and fear and terror and death, and yet know, really, that we're meant to be people of hope and light and resurrection. And so Bishop Loya, I think, picking up on that, instead calls us people of the Epiphany. Okay? And he says, as people of the Epiphany, our call is to stand in the midst of a world where Herod continues to flex and posture. Our call is to stand not in outrage or with reciprocal violence, but gazing in wonder and expectation for the joyful manifestation of Jesus wherever the poor, the outsider, the weak, and the oppressed are to be found. As people of the Epiphany, in the midst of a world where cruelty tries to pose as power, we continue to rejoice in the assurance that absolute and final power resides in the poor and crucified Jesus, who alone is our true King. Our Epiphany joy is the deep, defiant, revolutionary hope we have in the assurance that love is the most powerful force in the universe. Epiphany is all about the choices we make, who and what we choose to follow. When the Magi leave, there is no star to guide them back home. They only have the light of Christ, which resides in them here. A word, a trust, a light to bring them through a dangerous and perilous journey back. Maybe looking over their shoulders to see what Herod might do to them. They have to choose to carry that light back home. They have to choose a better way.